Welcome to the Private Wireless podcast series from Nokia, bringing you the insights that really matter around enterprise digital transformation and wireless solutions. The series covers technology comparisons, deployment best practices, total cost of ownership assessments, analyst reviews and reports to help you make the decisions you need for your business. So keep listening. It's no secret that private cellular networking's gaining tremendous momentum as an engine of Industry 4.0 transformation, driving factory automation, autonomous driving, and many other use cases. In this episode, Will Townsend, Senior Analyst at More Insights and Strategy, talks to Stefan Liggins, VP of Nokia CNS Enterprise Solutions, about the potential for this exciting new enterprise opportunity.
Welcome, Stefan.
I will.
Let's get started. I want to talk about use cases. So from my perspective, again, cellular private wireless is ideally suited for those unconnected OT environments, those non-carpeted environments that have traditionally been either a mismatch of modalities or simply unconnected. So I would love to hear from your perspective and Nokia's perspective, what do you believe are some of the most compelling use cases?
Sure. Well, maybe we should start with why is private wireless a good solution for industry? Because, of course, when you start to pull out more data from machines, control machines wirelessly, you can only do that if you have technologies that are very reliable, right? So when you commit more of your business processes or more of the things that are important for the economic output of your company or your factory. So that means that you can only start to make those kind of adjustments and improvements and changes to do more digitization if you have a wireless grid that is reliable enough to do it. And I think that's, of course, the basis why private wireless is such a good fit to the industry environment. So industry environments are often a little bit harsh. Use cases are difficult, often require very deterministic behavior from the network if you start to do this kind of applications. And cellular is extremely suited for that, right? So cellular technologies like LTE and now 5G, they have been built for difficult environments because CSP networks with their millions and millions of users, deep indoor coverage, they have to work under all circumstances. So that means that the base attributes of cellular technology fits really well to the industrial environment. So you see that coming back in the use cases that where basic data connectivity is often present, but then when people start to commit industrial protocols to make machines mobile, you mentioned, for example, AGVs, but we see also huge straddle carriers, cranes and ports, and they say, hey, I want to go to a much more mobile grid, also in factories, but then I need to put this kind of complex brownfield gear on a wide grid. And often that comes with protocols like Profinet and so on. And that's where cellular excels. So use cases we see, ports, as I already mentioned it, an obvious one, fairly large space, a lot of metal. We see a lot of indoor where you have a lot of uplink data because that's another aspect of cellular. Cellular is very good in getting data back from the devices, right? So often, for example, we are doing this interview on our laptops, and traffic to laptops is largely downlink, right? We have our video link here, but our video link is, what is it, 500 pixels or something like that, very low quality, right? But again, if I would have a video camera in an industry for quality process, I would want to have a 4K camera there, right? And then I can start to do these kind of advanced use cases that would bring economic output for the factory. So in a nutshell, all use cases we see, they come from needs in the industry to have a very reliable wireless grid that they feel they can commit more of their business processes on.
Now, cellular is new for the enterprise, right? So Wi-Fi has long enjoyed success. So, and I know, through Nuage, Nokia does have a route to enterprise, which really kind of positions you, I believe, uniquely relative to your traditional competitors. But what specifically is Nokia doing to make deployment simple and easy.
You mentioned Wi-Fi has a long history in enterprise, and actually we have a long history in private wireless for enterprises. But for example, in GSMR, right, we have GSMR is a technology where you cover the railways. We did the same in energy. We put all of the wide area networks for energy. But then we came to the point that, as you say, hey, now these industries want to adopt the same technology. And if you look to telco gear, so telco gear is very scalable. But the challenge is that it's built for CSP, so it starts big, and you can scale it even bigger. And if you now look at industries, they come in all shapes and sizes. The campus can be large, there can be tens of buildings, or then you would have a single machine room. And I think the key is that how can we bring the same technology platform in any sort of size or shape of the enterprise? And well, what have we done as Nokia? Well, we took a step back and we looked at that and we said, okay, so we need to look at what we want to retain from our telco base. And obviously radio is one of our absolute strongholds. We looked at our core stacks, but we said we need to repackage this in a smaller form factor. And we went there with two types of solutions. One is as a service model, very close to, if you would want to start a web shop, right? You go to a web host and you swipe your credit card, putting it a bit simple. But the web host, they create your entire environment. So you don't need to worry about, do I need to buy a server or what platform software? No, they put it ready for you. So we have one type of solution like that as a service product called Nokia Digital Automation Cloud. And if you want to start private wireless, you get plug and play private wireless, as we call it. Then on the other side, for more CSP-like use cases, and also for people that like to compile their own solution. So we have a modular approach called modular private wireless and BW, where you can say, okay, I'm going to select my my radio, I'm going to select my edge cloud or edge core, and I'm going to then put that all together in a package by myself. So also there, of course, we've taken some of the attributes to make it more scalable, more easy to use. So, but that's roughly, what we did after we started analyzing this market some 5 years ago. And we concluded that's the way to go. So as a service package, plug and play, we take all the complexity and simplify it for you. And then for users that want CSP-like capabilities, architecture that you can compile the products together of multiple vendors, we have to supplement BW.
Yeah, and that's very consistent with what I'm hearing. I mean, as a service, I think is going to make it very simple for the enterprise. But to your point, there may be some, companies that are very sophisticated, like the German automobile manufacturers, that bring in the core competency to sort of manage that. So, but I'm wondering, how important is having a strong ecosystem around this to make it successful? And certainly Nokia, in my opinion, and I've commented on this in Forbes articles that I've published and in other venues, obviously, Nokia is doing some things right here. But again, how important is having that ecosystem to support the solution?
It's really important because I think one thing that I've learned over the last few years, and we as Nokia have learned, is that this is a incredibly diverse environment, right? So there are so many different segments, so many specializations. There's so much knowledge in the actual use case, right? You mentioned automotive. Well, you need to be an automotive expert to understand how would private wireless fit into your shop floor, right? So, and of course, vice versa. We work with the automotive to explain how we think they could benefit. And I think, how have we responded to that? We have so-called segments, right? So we have an energy segment, we have an industrial segment, and we have a couple more. So we said we need to build up a set of industry knowledge and work closely with the industries to try to understand what do they really need. So partnerships and ecosystem is super important. So one is, of course, they bring in the attributes. And then, of course, the additional thing you need to do is how can they very easily integrate our solutions in their wider package? Again, if you would look to a port, and I mentioned these automated straddle carriers. So, of course, when that goes into the actual port, so then, the port user or the port authority, they seek that all of this works end to end. So that means that in the background, we form partnerships with the companies that make these machines, right? Because it's not just that you put the network there and you hope for the best. It has to work in a 24/7, super reliable way. Because these kind of facilities have enormous economic throughput. So I would say there's a few things then. So there's the segments where we focus on. We have special segment teams. And then in addition, we also focus on selected manufacturers of gear that we say, okay, we see all of this gear showing up in industry around the world. Probably makes sense if we pre-integrate, pre-test, have a roadmap together with these companies so that the end user, for example, if you have a factory, you will see you have machines there of multiple suppliers. So that end user that puts everything together doesn't need to worry about basic interoperability, performance, and reliability of the solution.
Yeah, it's not a trivial undertaking at all. I mean, when I think of, machinery on a shop floor, right, and, machine-to-machine connectivity, when I think about IoT, right? And so with 5G, will come support for massive IoT, industrial IoT support. And, there's no question that there have been a lack of standards there for quite some time. That's coalescing, that's becoming, a little cleaner, but it's still a tremendous challenge. So it's impressive to hear the level of investment that Nokia is making, looking at those verticals and partnering to ensure the interoperability, right? Because at the end of the day, if you can't get that device to connect to the network, you're
reliable, right? Because I think it's really interesting if you have these, say, these robots, especially robots that move. There's also a high amount of safety requirements. So that means that these robots, on one side, maybe they have video feeds for video analytics, but they also send heartbeat signals every 50 or 100 milliseconds.
Right.
And if you miss one, of course, the machine has to shut down, right? That's how it operates. So, and that means that, when you start to integrate with these machines, 5 nines is not good enough. It has to be 6 nines, because you miss one heartbeat, the machine shuts down and you immediately cause a disruption in this entire production flow. So, and these are the kind of interesting aspects that really require that, you have your partners, that you are in the middle of the ecosystem, that we as a company accept that we're good in telco, now we're good in enterprise connectivity, but also that we are open-minded to learn what is really, really needed there. And it's an interesting journey. So I've been to places I've never been before, seen machines I've never seen before. It's been extremely diverse. But once you get into that mindset, it becomes natural. So it means, I want to fit in the healthcare industry. I can only fill there if I look at the healthcare ecosystem and I look at, these people understand that business. So let me reach out to them and understand what is really needed. And then you can go to a healthcare provider and say, I have something useful for you, right? So it's becoming more natural for us. And of course, we've been doing this many years, but I would say it's key to being successful.
Let's shift the conversation. And there's been lots of talk about network slicing, right? And, we've been waiting for it for quite some time in a 4G world. It really promises to unlock new monetization opportunities for CSPs. I've been somewhat critical, and it's not targeted at a region, but I think in general, when you look at LTE, the operators did a pretty poor job really monetizing that investment. It was really all about access and unlimited data plans, especially in the US. And in a 5G world, given what you're seeing at spectrum auctions that are being spent, when you're looking at the investments that are being made in CapEx, you've got to find new monetization opportunities. So I'll just pose this question to you. So is there real value in an enterprise considering a private wireless deployment versus waiting for a CSP, an operator, to offer a slice with a guaranteed level of latency or throughput to support, their workloads, their use cases?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think in general, you mentioned LTE, but and what is the difference with 5G? I think, first of all, I think in 5G, enterprises have far more choice. I think it's important. So, of course, the slicing will offer some of their use cases a solution. And on the other side, they also have an option to build their own bespoke infrastructure. So in that sense, I think it's going in the right direction. And these options will also help enterprises to choose what is most economic for them, right? Because, of course, Industry 4.0 journey and digitalization in general releases economic benefits, but it doesn't mean it's unlimited. And some use cases you can invest more to tackle it, and some use cases maybe you need to have a more economic way of doing it. And some of them, if they are wide area, let's say it's a city solution, and you say, I am an enterprise that provides let's say something, I have a delivery company with robots, right? So we're seeing more and more automated delivery. Well, that company, it can never build a bespoke network on a city level to do that. So that means if he wants to run a reliable service, then of course now with 5G coming, there could be a machine layer or machine slice in that CSP network that offers the ability for him to reliably control those machines. On the other hand, if you go to a campus or a factory, and factories are interesting because typically in these campus networks, you have actually a slice inside your bespoke network, or actually not one slice, it's even 5 or 6 slices. So there you have a deeper granularity, right? There could be a slice for the Profinet, there could be a slice for video traffic X, there could be a slice for enterprise email. So there you see a need to, in this kind of small setup, to segment further into different type of QoSs, guaranteed bit rates, and so on. And of course, if you are an enterprise that needs that type of granular configurability, then I think you might be best off with building your own bespoke infrastructure. So, and if you have that, of course, that doesn't mean that you don't have a connection with the wide area slide, because objects come into your bespoke infrastructure and leave it again. And also there, I think 5G is offering much better opportunities to manage that, right? So you could go from a special bubble with enormous capabilities, which is your factory, and then maybe some of that, what's inside that factory leaves and goes to another facility. So, and then you can go into a more limited slice inside the CSP network if you need to stay connected. And then when you come into the next special bubble, you ramp up again. So we're starting to see this kind of differentiation in use cases, really good to address use cases that in particular address a bit wider geography, such as city areas. And then, these really super high-tech cases like a factory or a port, you have enormous uplink. There, typically, you have to put some sort of bespoke infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on the fact that, LTE will do the job given some use cases. 5G will be compelling for others. I know that you announced a standalone solution for your private wireless deployments. I think it was fall of last year. How does SA sort of factor into things? I mean, that's bringing 5G radio access network components with 5G core, which in my mind really truly unlocks the full potential of 5G. I think, some people their expectations have been let down a little bit because the operators have had to make this transition from 4G core to 5G core. But I'd love to hear, Stefan, from your perspective, what does SA do to sort of unlock that capability for the enterprise?
But even, before I go there, even do a step back, right? So, I remember when I started this several years ago, I visited a factory and I did my pitch on the possibilities of 5G and so on. And the factory owner tells me, okay, let's go and have a look at my machines, right? And then a lot of the machines turn out they are brownfields, right? He says, oh, here I have this PLC of manufacturer X. The PLC is 15 years old, right? And then I come with my millisecond 5G capability. I'm going to marry that to a PLC that's 15 years old. So it means that actually 5G is a learning curve on both sides. Maybe that's important to understand. So both the ecosystem in industry and enterprise, they can look at that, how can I use that best? And how can I next generation of PLC, if we stick to that topic, to make fully use of the benefits 5G has to offer. So, that's how it's going to grow. And then if we look to 5G SA, for me, 5G SA unlocks the enterprise business entirely. Again, it's the benefits that you said. It brings the slicing in the CSP side. But also, if somebody wants to build a bespoke infrastructure, you can go immediately 5G with the 5G SA. So the current 5G still requires that you have the LTE there as the anchor technology, right? So if you say, hey, you're going to build a private wireless network in your home, and you said, I want 5G, without SA, you would first need to put an LTE layer and then 5G on top. And of course, many companies, they are looking at that and they're like, guys, 5G is the future, so why can't I go straight to 5G? So 5G SA opens that up. And then if we look to the capabilities of 5G, obviously the initial use cases, Profinet is a good example, it doesn't yet require the super low millisecond latency. But of course, as we progress on this learning curve and we would go to AR in the work floor, we go to robot-to-robot communication, then actually, you need to have 5G and you need to have this lower latency. And there is this time-sensitive networking. So, and that is where 5G opens the door. We can now put that in the floor. People can start to use it and try it and continue this digital automation journey. And I think the other important point there is that everybody wants to invest in technologies that are future-proof. And I think 5G SA, is the proof point for industries that, okay, now I'm convinced. Yes, so when I start on this journey, even if it's today with LTE, I know I can continue forever. And I know that what I invest will be reusable and expandable with 5G SA.
Yeah.
So very important. And maybe the final comment there is, maybe it's shown through already a little bit. I think with 5G SA, we bring the affordability to the right point. So because you can build it in a very concrete way, very clean, and so you can optimize the setup so it fits the economic envelope of many campuses.
Yeah. And that's a great segue to the next question I wanted to ask you. You've already touched on some of the ways that you're delivering private wireless to customers. Would love for you to share any additional, sort of context there. But also, I'd love to understand what you and Nokia are doing to really differentiate yourself, because there are offerings out there. There are startups that are offering private 5G as a service. I spent time with Cisco recently at their Cisco Live event. They launched their networking as a service strategy and really view the 5G opportunity as a service as well. So would love to hear just some additional context on the actual discrete offerings and where you believe that you're adding differentiation.
On the big picture, there's two things. There's, differentiation on the edge. There's differentiation on the radio. And then overall, there's differentiation on the TCO. Actually, those three. So if we start from radio, and I think this is what I said in the very beginning, companies need to trust that they can put their business and the processes that generate the economic output on a wireless grid. And I think, of course, our heritage is extremely strong. And what we do in the enterprise space is that we take our full macro stack and we try to make that usable inside a private network. So we're scaling it down so that you can actually deploy an extremely feature-rich stack, which has all the quality of service features. It has all the slicing capabilities, the same as a large mobile network operator has. And I think, we did that in LTE, worked extremely well, and we're doing the same in 5G. And I think people sometimes a little bit underestimate the harsh conditions inside these campus networks. So if you go in there with a radio that is initially designed for home and you scale it up to function in these kind of harsher conditions, you're not going to get the reliability out of it that is really required. You have 6 nines and to trust that your automotive production line keeps running, right? Mm-hmm. So impacts of any sort are having huge economic impact. So that's one thing. So I think we have the radio that has the capabilities to deliver the performance needed. And then if we look to the edge cloud, so the edge cloud, we have said, okay, first of all, our entry ticket inside this business is, of course, private wireless. And then we said, but what else can we do, right? If we do private wireless, how can we help the enterprises faster on their digital automation journey? Mm-hmm. And I still remember the first time, we connected the HD video camera over private wireless, and I waved my hand in front of the camera, and then I look at the screen, and then almost a second later, my hand was on the screen, and I'm like, guys, this is not good, right? So it's unusable for a real-time video quality system, for example. So it turns out it's not so easy to optimize that, right? So because you have the coding, decoding, of course we have the latency in the wireless system itself. We have a bit of latency in the core. So getting that down to having real-time video, as I nowadays call it, is actually quite challenging. And then we learned, okay, so let's say I get everything real time. And then typically a question people say is, but for my application, I also need to know where is this object or where is the machine, right? So how can I couple real-time streaming of video or other sorts of data with positioning? So, and as we went through a lot of these use cases, so we learned there are some but fundamental digital automation building blocks everybody needs to build their use case. Mm-hmm. So we said, okay, so we need to go a step further, right? So yes, we bring the business of mission critical connectivity, but we also need to bring positioning. And we think we can do that because if I, put the radio in, I have the other elements, I'm probably in a really good position to also give you an accurate positioning solution. So we do that. We have a couple options there. We say, okay, video, yes, it has to be real-time video, because if you can't have that, then, the analytics doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Then we have something we call industrial connectors. I mentioned that already. There's Profinet, Canvas, all these kind of things that if you just put there a private wireless network and, you buy a CSP off the shelf, again, you don't meet that robustness and reliability. So we have a set of these building blocks that we can run as software applications on the edge cloud. And then as we anyway say, okay, now we have an application platform, perhaps we can open that up for third parties to put their applications there. So we offer services, connectivity, we offer a positioning service, we offer real-time streaming service to any third party that brings in the applications which are then tackling the use case itself. So we've gone further. So we have a so-called application framework. You can couple that seamlessly to the private wireless environment, and everything comes in a very scalable package. And why do I think that's so important? If you have a company, let's say you are a large logistics company and you have a huge logistics hub in your hometown, but then in Alaska you have a small logistics hub, and you develop all your applications and handhelds for the personnel using 5G. But then if the solution cannot be deployed economically in the small facility, then what's the point of doing it in your large facility?
Exactly.
And I think there we have spent a lot of time to say, hey, we make our technology fit to any type of size. And I think that's one of the differentiators I think we do better than the others. The final one is around spectrum. So we said, okay, let's invest in spectrum solutions. You need spectrum. We work with several parties. Obviously, our traditional mobile network operators are a preferred partner to do this. At the same time, you can never have enough spectrum. So we are very active in establishing spectrum that can be used or can be shared, such as CBRS, and even putting cellular technologies in our license. So those are some of the things we try to do. We touched already that we developed the segment knowledge. We have a large team that does that. And I would say perhaps overall, we have said we can only be successful if we take the technology blocks and we become an enterprise company. And I think that's kind of the turn we have made, and has been a journey for us to adjust to that thinking pattern.
Yeah. And route to market is so critical. I mean, you can have great technology, but if you don't have the proper route to market, you're going to have limited success, right? So you're making the requisite investments in these verticals. You're leaning into your traditional strength in RAN, which I like, and you've also developed through your Nokia Enterprise business unit a discrete focus in this area, and I would imagine also, leveraging Nuage and WAN and in that footprint to bring a total solution to an enterprise. Because at the end of the day, I speak to a lot of large companies. And they're not necessarily deciding between Wi-Fi or cellular private networking. They're trying to figure out the best connectivity solution for their use case, for their deployment, right? So when I look at you against your traditional incumbent competitors, that's what kind of strikes me as different, is that your route to market, to me, seems stronger. And so I keep tabs on the numbers of customers. I think last time I checked, you had 260, private cellular networking customers with many more private networking deployments behind that. Do you have an update for us, Stefan? And what are you doing to continue that acceleration?
Well, we are definitely far beyond that number. Don't have the current actuals, but we're clearly north of that number. And I think the growth is accelerating. We can see that now we talk about shipping tens per week as opposed to doing one per week, right? When we started, it was like that. So there's enormous acceleration. And I think maybe coming back still quickly to what you said, about ability to offer more to an enterprise. It is important because I think again, all these elements in itself stand alone are fairly complex. And I think to be successful, you need to simplify the technology. Again, coming back to this economic envelope, you can't send 5 PhDs to build it. So it's good to have all these technologies under the same roof, because that allows us to put a wrapper around it and simplify it. But so it grows quite quickly. I think still, even though it's growing quickly, I think we're at the starting point. So if I look at the market, I would say private wireless, I think it's now an accepted concept, and I can see that. We're not veterans, but we're getting there, right? So we start now what works, what doesn't work. And from what I see in terms of economics, and it's also often talked about Wi-Fi, how do you compare to Wi-Fi? Economics are actually really good. So I think cellular infrastructure leans itself very well to create a high quality wireless grid with less infrastructure than you can do with Wi-Fi. It's kind of logical. And we see that coming more and more true. And I think the most interesting thing is because we said, okay, let's add more value on the edge cloud. Actually, we have the ability to address use cases that used to be out of the range because of economics are now coming into the range. So where I perhaps earlier thought, okay, we go for complex factories as a target. Now I'm thinking, hey, wait a minute. We are getting so good at this and so scalable. I can even go to small retail stores, and I put a small retail store on a 5G wireless grid, right? And even if that retail store is just one room. So in that sense, so it's growing, but I think it's going to dramatically accelerate because it seems that making the technology easy to use, easy to deploy, and downscale it is going much better than we originally thought. So I think the possibilities are growing. And I hope next year we're talking, you say, oh, you have not 260, but we talk about, oh, you have 2,600, right? So that's the kind of numbers that I'm thinking of, right? And I wouldn't see why we wouldn't get there. That's what the practice has learned. Fits even better than we thought, and it seems the possibilities to make it fit to longer, economic use cases is accelerating. So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And you touched on licensed versus unlicensed spectrum. And I think one of the big sort of watershed, events that's occurred is, I call it the democratization of licensed spectrum. So, prior to, like CBRS, only operators could bid, billions of euros and billions of dollars on spectrum. And CBRS has really democratized that, and it's allowed municipalities, hospitals, schools, public entities access to licensed spectrum, to do these sorts of things. And even within the C-band auction in the US, there were more than just the traditional operators participating in that auction. So I think from that perspective, the access to licensed spectrum is really going to be the rocket ship that really sort of launches.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just for people to buy that spectrum directly. It also changes because we also see now spectrum available in Germany, UK, other places, but also for the mobile network operators, actually it also changes for them the ability to deliver these kind of bespoke infrastructures, because in the past, so they would need to take something away from the consumer business case, right? And then you would need to dedicate that to a relatively small bespoke use case, maybe in a campus, right? And it's very difficult to take spectrum away from a macro base station or allocate a lot of guaranteed bit rate because you lose trunking gain. Right, so because enterprises ask, so depending on the use case, if you have a lot of video uplink, you're going to need to make fairly static reservations, and that of course eats some of that spectrum. Where normally you have a lot of trunking for the consumer. So also for CSPs, I think initiatives like CBRS are wonderful because they can go to that enterprise customers and they say, hey, I already serve your employees, and now with, for example, using CBRS, I can also build your bespoke infrastructure for your operational and production environments. So yes, I fully agree. It democratizes, but it also, I think, unleashes our traditional customers to go much more aggressively in there without thinking, what are the consequences if I would do that to my classical business? So.
Yeah, I know, good point. And, it's going to open new monetization opportunities for CSPs. There's no doubt. I mean, certainly network slicing will do that, but this is a tremendous opportunity for them. And, I expect that they're going to embrace it very, very aggressively. So, Stefan, it's been a great conversation. I could keep talking to you for hours about this stuff.
Thanks, Will.
I also recently published a white paper with Nokia to really educate people on just kind of the ins and outs of private wireless. If you're interested, you can download that paper. It's nokia.ly/Private Networking 101. So I would encourage you to download that. There's lots of great information. Go into a little more depth relative to what Stefan and I talked about today. But again, thank you for tuning in and have a great day.
Our thanks to Will Townsend, Senior Analyst at More Insights and Strategy, and Stefan Ligens, VP of Nokia CNS Enterprise Solutions, for joining us today. It's exciting to see the potential opportunities being uncovered by this constantly evolving technology. Thanks for listening to the Private Wireless podcast series from Nokia. Don't forget to subscribe and be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for more insights around all things private 4.9G LTE and 5G, contact the Private Wireless team at Nokia. To find us online, just search for Nokia Private Wireless and click Talk to an Expert to get in touch.